Cleveland's winter was unforgiving, biting into the flesh of anyone unprepared for its relentless chill. The city, alive with hurried footsteps and a symphony of honking cars, had little regard for those who had fallen through its cracks. On a forgotten corner of Broad Street and 17th Avenue, Leonard sat, his back pressed against the cold brick wall of an old convenience store. Once, he had been part of the bustling rhythm of life, walking these same streets with purpose. Now, he was just another invisible figure, another nameless soul the world chose to ignore. His clothes, a patchwork of worn-out layers, did little to protect him from the icy wind that whistled through the alleyways. His fingers, rough and cracked, clutched a battered cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." At 42, Leonard had seen better days. Days when he had a steady job, a warm apartment, and the simple dignity of being seen. But life, as it often does, had unraveled faster than he could hold it together. A factory shutdown had taken his job. An illness had drained his savings. And before he could fully comprehend the descent, he found himself here, on the streets, an unwilling spectator to a world that had moved on without him. Each day was a gamble. Would someone stop and drop a few coins into his cup? Would he go hungry again? Would tonight be the night the cold took more than just his will to keep going? The people who passed him by rarely spared him a glance. Most avoided eye contact altogether, quickening their steps as if his misfortune might be contagious. Leonard sighed, shifting uncomfortably on the cold pavement, pulling his tattered beanie lower over his ears. The day had been like any other, lonely, predictable, and laced with disappointment. But that was before he noticed the boys standing nearby. Leonard had seen thousands of feet pass him by. Expensive leather shoes, scuffed work boots, high heels that clicked with authority. But these were different. A pair of pristine white sneakers stood just a few feet away, untouched by the city's grime. They weren't just clean. They were expensive, the kind of sneakers only someone young and privileged could afford. Leonard's curiosity was piqued. He lifted his head, his tired eyes narrowing against the pale winter sun. The boy standing there wasn't like the rest. He was tall, his posture composed, his hands tucked into the pockets of a sleek, dark jacket. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't lost in the frantic pace of city life. Instead, he stood still, scrolling through his phone, seemingly indifferent to the world around him. But Leonard wasn't the only one who noticed him. People passing by had started whispering, some subtly pulling out their phones, snapping photos as if they had spotted someone of importance. And that's when it clicked. Leonard had seen that face before. Maybe in a news segment playing a shop window or on the cover of a magazine, he once found discarded on a park bench. The realization sent a jolt through him. Barron Trump. The name alone carried weight, conjuring up images of wealth, power, and a life far removed from the harsh realities Leonard knew too well. But why was he here? What was he doing on this corner, standing within arm's reach of a man who had nothing? Leonard hesitated. He rarely approached anyone who didn't meet his eyes first. Years of rejection had taught him that asking for help often led to humiliation. But something about this moment felt different. Taking a breath, he spoke. "Hey, young man." His voice cracked from the cold, but he forced a smile. "Can you spare $1?" The boy froze mid-scroll. He had clearly heard Leonard, but instead of immediately responding, he tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the request. Slowly, he turned to face Leonard, his expression unreadable. For a moment, nothing happened. The world around them carried on. Cars whooshed by. Hurried pedestrians wove through the sidewalks, and the distant wail of a siren echoed through the cityscape. But in that small pocket of space, everything seemed to slow. Leonard braced himself for the usual responses. A dismissive shake of the head, an awkward chuckle, or worse, complete indifference. He had seen it all before. But then Barron spoke, and his words caught Leonard off guard. "What do you need it for?" It wasn't a refusal. It wasn't a condescending remark. It was a question, calm, direct, and genuine. There was no malice in his tone, only curiosity, as if he truly wanted to understand. Leonard blinked, momentarily thrown. Most people either ignored him or handed him loose change without a second thought. No one ever asked him why. Well, Leonard hesitated, rubbing his hands together for warmth. A cup of coffee would be nice. Maybe a sandwich if I'm lucky. There was a vulnerability in admitting it. Laying bare his need for something as simple as a meal. But Barron didn't smirk or shake his head. He didn't turn away. Instead, he took a step closer. Leonard felt a sudden shift in the air, a strange tension growing between them. People around them were watching now, some whispering, others openly recording the encounter on their phones. Leonard felt his stomach tighten with unease. He wasn't used to this, being the center of attention, being treated as anything other than a nameless figure in the city's backdrop. And yet, Barron Trump stood before him, not just looking at him, but seeing him. "What's your name?" Barron asked. Leonard hesitated. It had been a long time since anyone had asked. People didn't care about names when they tossed coins into a cup. "Leonard," he finally answered, voice barely above a whisper. Barron nodded, processing the name as if it meant something. And then, in a tone so simple yet powerful, he said, "I'm Barron." There was no arrogance in his voice, no self-importance, just an unexpected sincerity. And somehow, in that moment, Leonard felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Human. Barron crouched down, meeting Leonard eye level, a gesture so unexpected that Leonard felt his breath hitch. No one had ever done that before. "How long have you been out here?" Barron asked. Leonard swallowed hard. "Almost a year." It felt surreal to say it aloud, to acknowledge how much time had slipped through his fingers. He explained his story briefly, losing his job, getting sick, falling behind on rent. He spoke of how quickly life had unraveled, how easy it was to go from stable to struggling. Barron listened intently, his expression unreadable but focused. When Leonard finished, the teenager reached into his pocket, not for a single dollar, but for a crisp $100 bill. Leonard's breath caught. He had asked for $1, just one. But this was different. "Here," Barron said, handing him the bill. "This should cover more than coffee." Leonard stared at the money, his fingers trembling. "Why?" Barron shrugged. "Because I can." And with that, the moment that had begun as a simple request turned into something much bigger, something neither of them could have predicted. Leonard's fingers clutched the crisp $100 bill as if it might vanish. His mind reeled, caught between disbelief and cautious hope. He had asked for a single dollar, a fleeting kindness that would buy him a moment of warmth, a cup of coffee to chase away the bitter cold. But this was something else entirely. He lifted his gaze to meet Barron's, expecting to see pity in the teenager's eyes. Instead, he found something different. Expectation. Barron wasn't just handing him money and walking away. There was an unspoken weight in his posture, a silent message that this moment wasn't meant to be fleeting. Then Barron leaned in slightly, his voice calm yet firm. "This isn't just about the money. I want you to promise me something." Leonard's grip on the bill tightened. His throat felt dry. A promise? No one had ever asked him for anything before. "What's that?" he asked, unsure if he even wanted to hear the answer. Barron's expression didn't waver. "If I help you today, you have to help yourself tomorrow." "Deal." The words landed harder than Leonard expected. They weren't condescending, nor were they wrapped in empty sentiment. They were a challenge, a call to action. He had spent so long sinking into the shadows, forgotten by the world, that the idea of taking control again felt almost foreign. People had given him money before, but no one had ever asked him to do something with it. No one had ever expected more of him. Leonard hesitated, his mind clouded with doubt. Could he even keep such a promise? But then he looked back at Barron, this boy who had stopped when no one else had, who had spoken to him like a person, not a problem. He nodded. "Deal." Barron seemed satisfied with Leonard's answer, but he wasn't done. Reaching into his pocket again, he pulled out a small notepad and pen, tearing off a page with quick, deliberate strokes. "Go here tomorrow morning," Barron said, handing Leonard the note. "Tell them I sent you. They'll help." Leonard unfolded the slip of paper. The handwriting was neat and precise. It wasn't just an address. It was a name, a location, and a direct instruction. Hope Outreach Resource Center. Leonard had heard of it before, a shelter and rehabilitation center on the other side of town. A place where people could get warm meals, job assistance, and even medical care. He had walked past it once, but never had the courage to step inside. Barron must have noticed his hesitation. "I'll make sure they're expecting you," he added, his voice unwavering. Leonard stared at the note, something stirring inside him. This wasn't just a suggestion. It was a door opening, an invitation to reclaim a piece of his life. Would he walk through it? The longer Leonard and Barron stood there, the more the world around them seemed to shift. What had begun as a private moment between two people had now become a spectacle. The whispering had grown louder. The crowd had thickened. Phones were out, cameras rolling. Leonard felt his stomach twist with unease. He wasn't used to being noticed. Not like this. For so long, he had been invisible, passed by like a forgotten relic of the city's decay. Now, he was at the center of something that felt too big, too public. People were murmuring, snapping photos, recording videos. "Is that Barron Trump?" Someone whispered. Leonard looked up at Barron, expecting him to look rattled, maybe even embarrassed. Instead, the teenager remained completely unfazed. He wasn't performing for the cameras. He wasn't putting on a show. He had done this because he wanted to, because he believed in it. Leonard, on the other hand, felt exposed. The weight of judgment, of people watching his lowest moment unfold in real time, pressed against his chest. Barron must have sensed it. His voice softened. "Ignore them," he said. "This is about you and me. No one else matters." There was something reassuring about that, a strange kind of comfort. For the first time in years, Leonard didn't feel like just another nameless face in the city's backdrop. For the first time, he felt seen. As Barron turned to leave, Leonard sat there, staring at the bill and the note in his hands as if they were foreign objects. Could he really do this? He had been trapped in this cycle for so long that the idea of change felt impossible. He could take the money and disappear, buy food for the next few days, and let the world move on without him. Or he could take the note, walk through that shelter's doors, and start over. The choice shouldn't have been hard, but it was, because starting over meant trying. It meant opening himself up to failure, to hope, to the possibility that he might not make it. For years, the streets had been predictable, even in their cruelty. But hope was terrifying. And yet, as he stared at the neat handwriting on that small piece of paper, he heard Barron's words echo in his mind. "If I help you today, you have to help yourself tomorrow." Leonard exhaled. Tomorrow. It was such a simple word. And for the first time in a long time, he let himself believe in it. What Leonard didn't know, what he couldn't have possibly predicted, was that his story had already started to spread. The video of their encounter had been uploaded within minutes, spreading like wildfire across social media. Millions watched. Millions reacted. Some called it a staged act of publicity. Others called it a rare glimpse of genuine compassion. People debated whether Barron Trump's gesture was a privilege-fueled moment or proof that kindness could transcend power and wealth. But regardless of opinion, the impact was undeniable. The video captured something raw, something that resonated with people beyond political lines, beyond wealth and status. It was human. A young man, stopping to help someone the world had forgotten. And suddenly, Leonard's story wasn't just his own. It had become something bigger, the beginning of something more. As the world watched, as headlines debated the meaning of the moment, Leonard did something that mattered more than any viral video. He showed up. The next morning, he stood outside the shelter, note in hand, heart pounding in his chest. The building was warm, welcoming. Yet it felt like a different world from the one he had known. The receptionist greeted him with a kind smile. "You must be Leonard," she said. "We've been expecting you." And just like that, the first step toward something new had begun. The morning after Leonard walked into Hope Outreach Resource Center, something extraordinary was happening beyond the shelter's walls. The video of his encounter with Barron Trump had exploded online, flooding social media feeds and news broadcasts. The conversation wasn't just about one young man helping a homeless stranger. It had become a discussion about privileged generosity and the true impact of compassion. Major news outlets ran headlines like, "Small Blue Diamond, Barron Trump's unexpected act of kindness. Genuine or a PR stunt?" Small Blue Diamond, a billionaire's son and a homeless man. The story that's captivating America, Small Blue Diamond, the $100 that started a movement. Debates raged on television. Some called Barron's act performative, a mere drop in the ocean of wealth he came from. Others defended him, arguing that it wasn't about money. It was about seeing someone, about choosing to act when most people walked by. But outside the debates, something real was happening. Donations started pouring into Hope Outreach Resource Center. The shelter's phone rang nonstop. People from across the country, inspired by Barron's gesture, wanted to help. They sent money, supplies, and handwritten letters of encouragement. And it didn't stop there. Shelters across the U.S. began reporting similar surges in support. Volunteers signed up in record numbers. Restaurants started offering free meals to the homeless. Social media was flooded with stories of people paying it forward. The simple act of a teenager stopping to talk to a man on the street had become something much bigger. And in the middle of it all, Leonard had no idea that his story had sparked a movement. Inside the shelter, Leonard focused on something more personal, rebuilding his life. He had met with a caseworker, been given fresh clothes, and even had his first doctor's appointment in years. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't just surviving. He was being helped. But the biggest shock came one evening when a man hesitantly approached him in the common area of the shelter. At first, Leonard barely recognized him. But then, a familiar face. A face from a life that felt like a distant memory. "Leonard?" the man asked, his voice uncertain. Leonard's breath caught in his throat. He knew that voice. "Paul," he whispered, his younger brother, the one he hadn't seen in over a decade. Paul swallowed hard, his expression a mixture of relief and guilt. "I saw the video," he admitted. I didn't know things had gotten this bad for you." Leonard felt his chest tighten. He had spent so many years believing he was alone, believing that no one from his past cared anymore. Paul hesitated, then took a step closer. "I should have reached out sooner," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in years, Leonard let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything. The days that followed were unlike anything Leonard had known in years. Each morning, he had a warm place to wake up. Each meal wasn't just a lucky break. It was something he could count on. At the shelter, he started attending counseling sessions, talking through the years of pain and loss he had buried. He signed up for a job training program, learning new skills that would help him re-enter the workforce. One evening, he sat in the shelter's library, filling out his first job application in over a decade. It felt surreal. Only a few days ago, he had been sitting on a cold sidewalk, asking strangers for change. And now, he was looking toward the future. But the biggest shift wasn't just external. It was inside him. He no longer saw himself as a lost cause. He had made a promise to Barron Trump, to help himself. And for the first time, he was keeping it. As the story continued to dominate headlines, one voice was noticeably absent, Barron Trump's. He refused all interviews. He didn't make any public statements. When reporters asked the Trump family for comments, they were met with polite but firm refusals. Barron wasn't interested in being praised. Instead, he worked behind the scenes. Without fanfare, he ensured that Hope Outreach Resource Center received substantial private donations, enough to expand its programs and help even more people like Leonard. And while the world speculated about his motives, Barron simply carried on, unaffected by the noise. He hadn't helped Leonard for attention. He had done it because, as he had said that day, "If I can, why wouldn't I?" Weeks turned into months. The world moved on. Other news stories took over headlines. The viral videos stopped trending. But one thing didn't change. Leonard's life. He had secured a job at a small local business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. He had an apartment now, modest but warm, safe, and his own. Most importantly, he had a future. One evening, as he sat on his couch, he pulled out a folded piece of paper from his wallet. It was the note Barron had given him that day. The handwriting had faded slightly from being handled so much, but the words were still clear. Hope Outreach Resource Center. Tell them Barron sent you. Leonard smiled, running his fingers over the creased edges. He had told them, and because of that, He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And all because, on a cold winter's day, a young man had stopped, looked him in the eye, and given him more than just money. He had given him a reason to believe again. The story that started with $1, but became so much more. Small Blue Diamond, a simple request, led to an unexpected act of kindness. Small Blue Diamond, a teenager's generosity, sparked a movement of giving. Small Blue Diamond, a homeless man, found hope, a family reunion, and a second chance. Small Blue Diamond, and across the country, people were reminded that small acts can change lives. Because in the end, kindness isn't measured by wealth or status. It's measured by the willingness to stop, listen, and choose to care. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the world, one person at a time.